Hello, and welcome to the Tech Partner News Podcast, where we talk to leaders in the tech channel across Australia. I'm your host, Ben Moore, and today I'm joined by Tim Niblett, Head of Security Operations for The Missing Link. But first, let's hear a message from our sponsor.
Need a Microsoft distributor to help you thrive in the AI era? Data has the proven people, programs, and partnerships to modernize your practice and turn disruption into opportunity. 40 growth-led programs, from onboarding and partnering, capability building and enablement, through to go-to-market campaigns. 60 plus certifications across Azure, AI, security and Copilot, plus 5 in-house Microsoft certified trainers working directly with you. Their partners say they're like an extension of their team. Make Microsoft work for you. Visit dicadata.com.au/Microsoft.
Welcome, Tim.
Good morning, Ben. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for joining us. So my first question, I actually had a quick look at your profile on the Missing Link website, and it does show you holding a ukulele. Do you actually play?
Yes, I have played the ukulele. My family is fairly musical. We have saxophones and piano and drums, kit, and all the rest. But so my kids play a lot. But yes, I have played the ukulele. I have played as part of the Blue Mountains ukulele group.
Oh, cool.
So music is a passion, that's for sure.
Great. Yeah, I imagine working in cybersecurity, you kind of need those hobbies to keep you sane as well. You've been in cybersecurity for some time now, and according to your bio, you started in security via networking and firewalls. Tell me a little
Yeah.
bit about you at that time and what it was like working in cybersecurity in the era of just networks and firewalls.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about the late 90s. It was really just firewalls, proxies. The only real threat vector was spam emails.
Slightly different situation now.
Yes, very different situation now, that's for sure.
Interestingly, though, I would argue that email's still the number one vector compared to what it was like then.
Yes, it is. What we can say is that the phishing and the spam has got an awful lot more advanced and clever than it was back in the days of the "I love you" virus and things like that, for certain.
And you've joined the Missing Link relatively recently in
Mhm.
January this year after 5 years at IBM. And was there something that's changed in the industry that made you want to move from kind of a massive multinational into a smaller provider?
Yeah, I think there is, and it's something that I've seen over my years of experience. I think the larger providers in the marketplace tend to leverage their size and their technology partnerships, perhaps to constrain their offerings and to constrain what they are able to do for their clients, and to try and direct their clients in particular
Mm,
ways to better fit themselves. And I just prefer being in a situation where I'm able to, listen to what clients need, listen to the marketplace and where it's going, and be in a situation where I can be flexible and adaptive to all of those things, rather than being, perhaps within a more rigid framework.
mm. And you mentioned that you've had a broad career in cybersecurity, and you've worked for the police, for
Mhm.
banks and insurance in Australia and UK and Spain. I mean, that's a lot of different places, but there must be some kind of key threads that run through that are always true wherever you're working. So, what are the things in the various places that you've worked that have kind of proven to be truisms in the world of cybersecurity?
Yeah, look, that's a really good question. I think what's true is that the fundamentals don't change, right? Regardless of the industry, the country, or whatever. Um, you know, Cybersecurity is an awful lot about um, diligence in the fundamentals, knowing your environment, knowing your configurations, having good change management, patching policies, um, being prepared. doing practicing and being prepared for the unknown. Those things don't change, right?
And how much of
Um,
that is technological and how much of that is cultural?
it's nearly all cultural, to be honest with you. I think
Yeah.
you said earlier, spam and email is still a significant threat vector. How we respond to that is cultural from an organizational perspective, right? Do we have awareness campaigns? Do our staff sort of behave in a safe and secure manner from a cybersecurity perspective?
So if you're an MSSP, managed security services provider, you're working with some of these smaller companies, some middle-sized companies
Mm,
probably, and they're kind of saying, well, um, we've got some stuff in place, so we will probably be fine. But the reality is that if somebody is determined to attack a company, there's really very little that can stop them if there's a sustained effort to go through, and human error happens as well.
mm, mm,
So, do you want to talk a little bit about the need for kind of not just prevention, but also
mm.
what to do once the attack has happened?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I will just say, I think that mindset of I've got some stuff in place, so I should be okay. We're seeing less and less of that
Mm,
as time goes on. But yeah, look, prevention versus response. The way that we handle both of those things at the missing link is that we separate them, right? And just from an industry perspective, I've actually seen that a lot in the industry where clients will have separate providers for those two separate elements, right? You might have one provider who's looking after all of your perimeter and your defense technologies, and have a different provider who's looking after your detection and monitoring and response capability, right? Um, it's almost a separation of duties is good sort of thing, so that both teams can benefit from each other's experience and knowledge, and not necessarily be controlled or impacted by the other. So I mean, we keep separate teams for our sort of protection and defense services versus our monitoring and response services. It's a slightly different mindset, I think. The prevention mindset really is about excellence in engineering, excellence in configuring these tools, this proliferation of tools that we have these days, all of which, by the way, are completely worthless if they're not configured properly
mm.
and used properly. So there's a real requirement for some deep engineering skills in those tools, versus the detection and monitoring side, right, which is really about being eyes on, 24/7, threat intelligence, being up to speed on all the latest threats, all the latest threat vectors. Obviously, trying to stay one step ahead of the adversaries. That's the name of the game in that part.
Let's take a quick pause to hear a message from our sponsor.
There's a lot going on for Microsoft partners right now. Today's pressures, CSP program changes, compliance, security. Tomorrow's challenges, AI disruption, rising customer expectations. It's tough just keeping up, let alone getting ahead. That's where Dicker Data comes in. Australia's #1 Microsoft Cloud, Azure SMB, and Copilot distributor. With 45 years' experience and 28 local experts who know Microsoft inside out. They help you turn disruption into opportunity. With the right people, growth-led programs, and exclusive partnerships. Make Microsoft work for you. Visit dickerdata.com.au/Microsoft.
Talking about cybersecurity today, I mean, we've talked a little bit about how it's drastically changed over the last 20 to 30 years, but it's, constantly changing, constantly moving. Is there anything about cybersecurity at this point in time that sets it apart from whatever's come before it? Anything distinct about, if you look back and say, oh, that was the era of X?
Yeah, I think it goes back to the phrase that you used a few minutes ago, right? Which was the like, I've got some tools, I'm okay.
Mm,
I think that's what's changed, really, right? Is if you go back a few years, there was this just general sort of feeling around cybersecurity that you'd sort of tick a box and say, well, it's done, right?
yeah.
you know, and the feeling then within that organization might be back to their board or whatever. Have we got cybersecurity covered? Yes. Pop your head around the door 30 seconds for a board meeting and say, yep, no, we're all good for cybersecurity. We got these people doing it. We're okay. Um,
Yeah. Here's my one-page PowerPoint that says everything's
exactly right.
fine. Yeah.
It's my one-page PowerPoint says everything's fine. Right, and that created what so certain people would call the black box sort of mentality, right? Where you don't know what's going on inside the black box, but as long as there's something going on inside it, then you're okay. That's really not acceptable anymore, right? And organizations and the people that sit in roles such as the CISO or the security operations manager, or that, they're really not. They don't have that mindset these days, right? They're a lot more aware of all of these things that need to be under control, of all of the elements that need to be under control, the risk, and they're a lot more aware of the value that their managed service providers bring or don't bring if they're not doing a good job, right? They're a lot more challenging. They challenge us as managed service providers more, to say, tell me exactly what you're doing, show me exactly what you're doing, and explain to me exactly why I'm paying you this amount
Mm,
for doing those things. So there's a lot more rigor and focus on what managed service providers are doing, I think.
cool. Yeah. I know it's a fool's errand to try and like predict the future, as everybody says. So I'm not going to ask you to like tell me the 5 things that are going to happen in the next 5 years. But from your kind of perspective, what do you see coming? And as we kind of enter an increased level of uncertainty, kind of globally, you mentioned the economy before, but there's other factors that are happening. How do you make sure that into the future you're keeping customers protected?
Yeah, very interesting question. And the daft response would be to immediately jump to AI and such, right? And say, well, that's the future and that's what we've all got to watch out for, right? But I think actually, it comes back to this protection and defense, monitoring, detection kind of thing, right? In the past, the time lag between threats being identified and us being able to actually affect change, in order to protect against those threats. We could measure that time in weeks or months. But with this proliferation of threat actors and just the automation of getting attacks out there, the time from identification of zero-day threat to actually seeing our clients being impacted by these things, it is down to minutes, right? It really is. Go back maybe 10 years, you go, it was enough to say, there's this threat out there. We're telling you about the threat, and what you do about it is up to you,
Mm,
right? 5 years ago, we might have said, there's this threat out there. Here's what we think you should do about the threat. I think where we're getting to, particularly in the services industry, is the client expectation is that we say, there was a threat. We've made some changes. There's no threat anymore. And yes, we did see that people were trying to leverage it to get some of your information, but it's okay. We sorted it out. It's done.
how do you do that when there's minutes between the threat coming online and between the attacks happening?
Well, that's why I'm in. Yeah, I do this job, right? Because that's the interesting question. That's the interesting puzzle to try and solve. But it is centralized around that orchestration and automation, right? We've got to get a lot better at orchestrating this stuff, automating it.
Quick bonus question for you then. how do we expect new MSSPs to start and grow and thrive in such a dense, complex, deep situation? Are we going to just see continued consolidation until it's just the big one standing?
Um, that's wow, that's a very interesting question. I think there is an element of that consolidation. Undoubtedly, there is, and because it's a difficult question to answer, right? But I think you also will continue to see, as we have seen, um, service providers or vendors come to the forefront with very good, impressive engineering and technical solutions, right?
Mm.
Where you get these. I guess you could term it niche, but a lot of the time it's not actually that niche. It's like somebody's come up with a a niche way of solving a problem that actually is very, very broad, right? Somebody
Mm.
comes up with a very clever way of solving a problem. We've seen a number of service providers proliferate because of that and coming up with, hey, we're the only ones who know how to solve this problem, right? And even within Australia, we've had quite a number of those smaller service providers and technology companies who've answered that. Go all the way back to, I mentioned spam, right? And I used to work for Surf Control, which previously was, Emu Tech, which was, Australian built email protection, right? There's a number of those things, and yes, those companies have now been consumed into Surf Control, WebSense, you know, um, a variety of different large conglomerates. But that's, again, it goes back to that same question of, you know, why I'm at the missing link in particular, right? Is that I do believe in those, specialist skills, excellence in engineering, diligence in providing services, and I think that our clients expect that from us.
Well, I think that's a strong point to end on. So thank you so much for joining us on the Tech Partner News podcast.
Thank you very much. It's been great. I really enjoyed it.
And thanks to all you listening as well. To make sure you don't miss an episode, subscribe wherever you listen. And if there's someone whose story you'd like to hear, drop an email to editors@techpartner.news to let us know. For more news from and for the Australian Technology Channel, head over to techpartner.news. I've been Ben Moore.